for as long as I can remember, I've thought I was in charge. That really hit home for me when I came across this photo. That's my inner CEO at 9. I was fast and ambitious, a first-class overachiever, whether it was president of my class or captain of the lacrosse team or the top ad executive. I was driven to win. And so when I was 6 and this man who would become my stepdad came into my life, I had already decided that I didn't need any help. Joe was different. A fireman, a church minister. He was committed to community and helping others. I, on the other hand, was committed to climbing the corporate ladder and making my mark on the world. We were total opposites. Joe, a first responder, and me first to the finish line. Growing up with us was contentious and comical, but at the end of the day, we were family. He wasn't supposed to be working that day. I later found out that he had moved his shift so that he could come to my 1-year wedding anniversary that night, the night of September 11th. As soon as I realized he was on duty, I knew immediately. He would do the thing he'd always done. He would run right into that building, up 78 flights of stairs, save countless lives along the way, break right onto the floor of impact, and step into the fire. I know this because we recovered the radio transmissions that detailed the final moments of his time. He was last heard calling out to his men at 9:57 a.m., just 2 minutes before the second tower came down. He said, "I'll be right to you." That moment altered every sense I had of the world. It was unimaginable. And as we move through, he is missing to he is gone, from we must find his body to we must find who is responsible, it wasn't anything I was prepared for. Do you remember that day? I was there in New York. I have this vivid memory of thousands of people parading up Park Avenue, everyone in a hazy state of aftershock. And I remember saying to my colleague with absolute certainty that everyone will know someone who is lost today. We will never be the same. But as horrible as that day was, there was this way in which we looked out for one another that I had never experienced before, and I've not experienced since. We were real and raw and vulnerable and open, and we were together in that. But it was hard, and I was unprepared. At first, I did the thing I always do, take charge. It's what I had learned. When things feel out of control, control them. But there was no fixing this problem. And so I had to let go of everything I thought I knew. That's when yoga and meditation came into my life. Instead of fixing and controlling, I started to let myself feel. And my yoga mat felt more like a wrestling mat, the place where I faced my pain and my fear and my loss. And it was messy. But something was happening. The more that I moved and breathed through it, the more my grief changed. And I realized that the practice wasn't just healing me, it was revealing me, this new version of me. So much so that I quit my job, moved across the country, became a yoga teacher, and vowed to change the world. I arrived in San Francisco just as well-being was taking off. And on any given day, you could either find me in the yoga studio, the Whole Foods, or the Lululemon. It really felt like something magical was happening in the community. People were waking up, eating organic, buying green everything, piling into yoga studios like it was church. We were hungry for healing and connection and hope, and I was obsessed. I would hit my mat, stock organic food, seek exotic retreats like my life depended on it. And then when I would step out of the yoga studio on Folsom and 4th, green juice in hand, I would walk straight into the same group of homeless men that occupied that stoop every night. At first, I plowed right by them. And then I looked. And then I stopped. And then I realized something wasn't right. The world outside of my well-being bubble was different, really different. Every day, families struggling to survive, children going to school hungry, guns ripping apart entire communities, citizens losing their homes to the mortgage crisis, people denied human rights and dignity based on the color of their skin or their religion or their sexual orientation, non-stop policing, incarcerating, deporting, and bombing. This was the real world after 9/11. And I realized that the practice wasn't just revealing me, it was revealing the world in living color. And no matter how much I tried to meditate it away, I couldn't unsee the suffering all around me. I used to think it was enough to have good intentions, to be a healthy and compassionate citizen. But I started to wonder if that was just a myth that enabled me to escape. And so I began to grapple with why I got to be well when others didn't. How somehow well-being had become a privilege afforded to people with access and time and money, people like me. Isn't a culture of well-being that doesn't consider the welfare of all just contributing to an ever-increasing divide in this country? While one part of the country is making choices between organic and GMO-free food, the rest of the country is trying to figure out how to pay their bills and feed their families. The truth is, we are not well, not by a long shot. And wherever there's a prevalence of poverty and unemployment, lack of access to housing and healthcare, people are struggling to survive, much less be well. We call it the well-being gap. The unequal conditions that determine who gets to be well and who doesn't. A well-being gap that doesn't include everyone hurts all of us. It destabilizes our economy. It causes stress, which makes us sick. It fuels higher rates of crime and violence. It holds our children back, and it separates us from one another. And here's the kicker. The cost of that gap in America is upwards of $500 billion. These are not someone else's problems. These are all of our problems. And it's overwhelming. It's easy to feel powerless in the face of that. Everywhere we turn, our culture tells us we're not good enough. They say, buy this and you will be happy. Do this and you will feel beautiful. Eat this and you will be healthy. My favorite, read this and you will be enlightened. It is a storyline sponsored by a system that profits from our sickness. And I believed it. I bought it. I even sold it. And so there I was, with my well-being and my privilege, with my good intentions and my relentless drive to change the world, and I was lost. Because after 9/11, I had devoted my life to doing everything differently, to serving others the way that Joe had with his life and his sacrifice. But I simply went from wanting to be the winner to wanting to be the hero. Not only did I miss the point, but I was perpetuating the very thing that I had set out to change. I was living an illusion of well-being that was making me increasingly disconnected from the rest of humanity. And I ended up right back where I started, heartbroken and alone. And I think it was in that place, at the bottom of my grief and hopelessness, that I finally got what Joe was trying to teach me all along. He was never alone in his bravery, always flanked by the men of Ladder 15. They ran into that burning building together for all of us, and they reminded us of who we really are and what we're willing to do for one another. Because we are not separate from the suffering of our neighbors, the same way that we are not separate from the planet. And the truth of well-being is that no one can be well unless everyone is well. We are in this together. And while we may be part of the problem, that must also mean that we are key to the solution. Albert Einstein, a man who thrived on the unknown, said this: "There is one thing we do know, that we are here for the sake of each other. Above all, upon those whose smile and well-being our own happiness depends." I think this perhaps was his greatest discovery, the one that's been here all along. What matters most, what makes life worth living, what makes the impossible possible is us. Because together we can go towards the hard-to-look-at truth of our people and planet, the uncertain and unknown future that stands before us. And if we reclaim well-being, if we say that everyone deserves the conditions that enable them to live up to their full potential, then we can work together to ensure that no one is left out and everyone can be well. And here's the good news, and there is good news. We are already. There are 50+ million people in the US right now committed to living well, eating healthy, and protecting the environment. And we are fueling a market of personal wellness, organic products, sustainable products that totals over $300 billion. This is not the story of powerless people. In 2013, a group of us came together to create CTZNWELL, to explore what's possible when we get organized and come together for everyone. And the first issue that we took on seemed impossible, but totally necessary: minimum wage. We recognized that living wage and one's ability to take care of themselves and their families was central to well-being, to all of our well-being. And so we joined the coalition of Fight for 15 to raise the wage and ensure that everyone had a fair shot at being well. We showed up and marched rally after rally. We hosted community conversations and teach-ins. We staged sit-ins at the Capitol, and it worked. After 2 years of collective action, we won in New York and around the country, transforming the lives of millions of Americans who had been stuck in poverty. And while our contribution may have been small, we'll never know, we did something important. We were a part of something bigger than ourselves. And I realized then that we could do something together that mattered. And for the first time in a long time, I had hope. Today, all across America, communities are coming together to take back their power and to take on well-being. People like you and me rallying around healthy food in our schools, access to healing and healthcare, conservation and clean energy. These groups are taking care of one another. They're having courageous conversations about inequality and injustice, and they're taking action. And what might look small and local on the surface is uniting to become a collective force that is changing the game and shifting power to where it belongs, to the people. Together, we are building a nonpartisan political movement that is closing the well-being gap and elevating our country to one that works for everyone, because we have to. We can't wait for other people to act. It's up to us. We, all of us, are the first responders, and this is our call to action. It's been almost 15 years now since 9/11. And in so many ways, we have let fear drive us apart and threaten our collective well-being. We still do. But we have also inherited a legacy of courage. From our ancestors who fought for our freedom and civil rights to the first responders who gave their lives on 9/11, we stand on the shoulders of great men and women, and we are among them in this room right now. So look around at who's here. I mean it. Look around. This is your part. Look at who we are and who we are becoming together. And let us dream forward a new story for ourselves and for our future, where everyone can be well, regardless of how much money they make or the color of their skin, what God they worship or who they choose to love. Where everyone can show up fearlessly in their full potential and power, where we can understand that we are not alone in our heartbreak and we are not alone in our hope. And where we take care of one another because we are in it together and we are better together. Thank you.